How to control other people. Assalamu alaikum. This is your brother Mohammad Arshad, and today I'm going to be sharing with you 3 tips to control other people. Now, I know it sounds dodgy, it sounds weird, but by control, I mean influence and kind of change the way they behave, the way they feel. Now, like Uncle Ben said from Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility. So what I'm going to be sharing with you, I'm going to assume that obviously you're going to use it for good. But I want to talk to you about this because a sister contacted me and she said that she hosts a podcast show. And what happened is that she had a guest, a really good guest, famous guest that was supposed to come on. And before they came on to the cast, they were feeling really bad. They were feeling very negative and they weren't in a good state. Why? Because of something that had happened before the podcast. So by the time they arrived there, they were in a terrible state. So you imagine that you're going to interview someone now and they're just not there mentally. They're like in a different place and they're not feeling great. So she said, what could I do in a situation like that? So I want to share these 3 tips with you, and I think that they'll benefit you not only about changing other people's behaviors and their own kind of way of being, but also your own state. So the 3 tips. The first thing is, I would say, so change their physiology. Now, the physiology, the physical way of being, affects the way we feel mentally. Okay? It's quite strange, but it does. Now, you think about someone who is depressed. Someone who's depressed, how do you imagine that they would be? Like, just imagine someone who's really depressed. How would they be sitting, right? You can imagine, first of all, they would be sitting, right? Someone who's depressed, maybe they would be down, maybe they would be curled up in a ball, maybe they would look down. That's the way someone's physiology would be who's depressed, right? Imagine someone who's confident, someone who's happy. You probably imagine that they're standing up, they've got their hands in the air, and they've got this position which is powerful. You can't imagine a depressed person being like that, and you can't imagine a happy and confident person being like the depressed person. So what this kind of shows is that your physiology will affect the way you think and feel. So it's really, really important that you actually get the guest that you've got coming and get them to change their physiology. So if someone came in and they were feeling really, really bad, what I would say to them is, and you can tell them, by the way, that in order for us to have the best interview, I want to get you in the right state. And the way I do that, I have a checklist and I have a process in the way I do that, and I want to take you through that. So the first thing we're going to do is stretching. Right? So this may seem weird, but because they know that you're trying to help them to have a great interview, you could just say to them, look, I think we should just do some stretches. And that stretching out of your body, that will start to make them feel better. The second thing you could do is breathing exercises. Just taking a moment to just breathe properly, it makes a world of difference. And if you can just sit there and breathe, just nothing's going on except the breath, I think that makes a massive difference. So you could breathe with your eyes open, with your eyes closed, and then get them to do something a little bit more physical. So before I start my videos, I try and get the blood rushing either by jumping up and down or doing something crazy, just to kind of get yourself in that mode where you got a high energy, because that high energy will actually affect your mentality. So like I said, the biggest thing you can do is your physiology. Now, the second tip I would say is change their psychology. Okay, so psychology, the way you feel or the mental state that you have, is all based on one thing: focus. Okay, it's all about focus. Now, before I tell you about shifting focus, let me just ask you something, right? Can you think of a time in your life when you achieved something amazing? Like you achieved it, and you look back and you think, Alhamdulillah, you know what? That was a really, really good achievement that I'm so happy about, right? And by achieving it, you can imagine the kind of emotions you felt when you achieved it. I'm kind of thinking about graduation. I remember university, I was like so happy. I was one of the first people to graduate from my family. And like being in that state where you're kind of standing there and the people that you love, like your parents and everyone there around you, and you have the achievement and they share in the happiness. This is amazing, right? So imagine something like that for yourself. Okay, good. So if you really thought about that, what you found is that your state would have changed, right? Your emotions would have changed. So the one way you can actually shift people's focus is through questions, right? So shift people's focus through questions by asking them about things. So you could say to someone who's feeling really bad, you could be like, how are the children doing? What's something really cool that the children did in the last week or something, right? Or you could say, I really like this piece of your work, like tell me about that incident, right? So something, achievement that they've done because you've researched them for the interview, you'll know what they've done. So you start talking to them about things that are really positive, things that are really good. And you'll find that just by you starting to push them into that direction, once they get into the momentum of talking about that, they will themselves change their state. So it's really, really important. You can always ask for a story. A story is very good because a story will get you into it. So you can see just by asking questions, just by focusing on areas that would make them feel positive, achievements, things like that, that would actually change their psychology. And while they're talking, feel free to ask more questions about it. So if someone says, well, you know, you said that you feel really good about your achievement of graduating, who was there from your family? Were your parents there? Who else was there? What did they say about it? And then that's going deeper into those emotions, right? So there's more kind of state there. And so the way you choose your questions is by thinking about the type of state that you want them to be in. So maybe if you want them to feel confident, you know that achievement is something that they feel confident about. Maybe if you want them to feel excited and energetic, maybe you could tell them, ask them a question about what really excited you in the last 2 weeks or something. So it's all about getting to that psychology by using questions and stories. And then the third thing is the physical environment. Okay, physical environment makes a massive difference. Imagine if I said to you right now that I will serve you a plate of the best food you've ever eaten, and it will be on a rubbish bin bag, right? A rubbish bin bag. Now compare that. By the way, the bin bag's clean, right? So it's fresh and it's clean. But compare eating food on that to a beautiful plate of china, right? Which one would you prefer? They're the same, the food's the same, but you would prefer the other one because the physical environment makes a massive difference, right? So it's really, really important that you make the environment that they're first entering into, make it welcoming, make sure that it looks good, make sure it feels good, make sure that it smells good, and just make sure that the whole environment is something that nurtures the kind of emotions that you want to bring out, whether that's achievement or happiness or energy. Just make sure that your environment really does that for you. The other thing you need to realize about the environment, the biggest influencer of the environment for them is you, because you are part of their environment. We need to know that emotions are infectious. Emotions are infectious, right? What that means is that if you are really excited about something, it will rub off onto them, right? And it's happened to all of us. You'll meet someone and there's a guy or a girl who's so like energetic and so excited. And while they're talking to you, they're excited. And while you're talking to them, you start feeling excited, right? And so what you want to do is that if you see someone's in a state where you don't want them to be, you should demonstrate the state you want from them. And people will naturally mirror each other. People will naturally, grab that enthusiasm and they'll make it their own enthusiasm. And then what you'll find is suddenly by changing their physiology, their psychology and their environment, suddenly their whole way of being has changed. And I tell you that the interview that you conduct would be completely different. And of course, you could use this on yourself as well. Now, as a bonus thing, what I would say is that if you're going to be doing regular interviews and you're going to be doing something often and you're going to have to change people's state, then I would say make it a process and make it something regular and therefore create a checklist for it. So have it like very clear, simple thing, just line items of what you should do. For example, welcome guest with a bottle of water or welcome guest with a hug, if it's the same gender, obviously. And if it's a case of sitting them down in a specific place, maybe it's about asking them certain questions, maybe it's about doing the stretching, whatever it is, but get a checklist done so that every single time you ensure that the people that you're dealing with are in the best state possible. And the other thing I'd say just before I go is that you can really use this stuff not just for podcast interviews and things, but you could use it for meetings. One of the things we do in our meetings is good news. We start our meetings with good news. What is something good that happened in the last week? So you imagine what kind of footing that sets the meeting off on, as opposed to if we just went straight into business, right? Everyone expresses something great that happened last week. Everyone feels great about it. So these are the kind of things that you can do. I hope that this has helped you, inshallah, and I hope you're going to use it for good. Please like the video, please share it, because that helps other people to see it as well. And if you haven't done so already, please subscribe. Jazakallah khair for watching, and I hope it all goes well for you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.